Hello, artists. Today I'm going to go over some concepts of drawing perspective and getting accurate perspective. And it's one of those things that a lot of times students will say, oh, I need to be able to learn perspective so I can learn to draw. And for some reason, they get that thought in their mind that they have to know perspective to be a good artist. But really, the only time you really need to understand perspective is when you're dealing with a man-made object that is that's box-like or has right angles and parallel lines. So those are the things. So if you're drawing a city scene, you need to understand a little bit of perspective. If you're drawing a still life that has a box in it of some kind, then you will need to understand the perspective. A lot of times you can just eyeball it. If you're trying to figure out an angle, you can use your pencil as an angle finder and then draw that same angle on your paper. So you don't need to really get too mathematical and complicated, but I am going to go through some of the terms and some of the concepts. And I think it would be a good idea if you're new to perspective to try drawing some boxes at least, and then you can apply the things you learn to a drawing of a building, which is going to be an upcoming lesson. So here's a photograph of a box. We're mainly seeing the front face. The front face of it is closest to us. So it would be kind of like, from the aerial view that you're seeing, it would be kind of like seeing it like this. But if you turn it so that the corner of the box is the closest thing to you, it changes. So you notice on this we have horizontal lines, and then we have some other lines that are angling. But on this, we don't have any horizontal lines. Everything is angling. So this is called two-point perspective, and everything goes back to converges in 2 points we call vanishing points. And on this, there's really only one vanishing point where things going back into the distance converge. And you kind of think of that when you're thinking of the road going off in the distance, like if you're driving on a desert road and you see that it appears that the road meets in one point. So these are little drawings that I had the students do, one-point perspective, and include a building on the side. And you can see, let me get an easier example. There are horizontal lines. So if you had a ruler and you held it up to the front of the building, you could see it lines up with the bottom and the top of the picture plane or of the paper. The vertical line lines up with the vertical edge of the paper. In fact, that's kind of a rule in perspective. If there's something that is vertical in real life, it stays vertical no matter what kind of perspective it is, as long as you're looking off into the distance to the horizon. It changes if you're looking up at the top of a building, then the vanishing point is up in the air. But just on a regular viewpoint, everything stays vertical. So here's some examples of one-point perspective where all lines going off into the distance converge. And you notice that the telephone poles are all vertical. For some reason, a lot of times people start ending up leaning the telephone poles, and what's happening is your left side of your brain, which is the bossy side that makes you not draw right, it wants to make the telephone poles perpendicular to this vanishing point, and to the line that's going off into the distance. So be careful you don't let things lean. So here's a fence where it's going off. The horizontal part just stays horizontal. Steps are a completely different thing. It depends on whether the steps were coming out of the side of the building that's going off into the distance or the front face, as to how you handle those steps. On this one, the the risers or the lines that show the corners of the steps are going back to the vanishing point. And on this one, all of the risers are horizontal, but the little zigzaggy parts are going back to the vanishing point. So it would, it'd be fun to do a quick little drawing like that. This one was a little more complicated, but these are ones that the kids did. So these are some nice samples, and I'll probably put a couple of these examples on the Google Classroom. So here's 1-point boxes. Here's an interior view of a room, and the vanishing point is still there, but this back wall is covering up the horizon. So you still would have to draw that little vanishing point and then erase it later, and everything that's going off into the distance would line up to that vanishing point. So you can see if there's a vanishing point right here, all of the things that are going off into the distance above our eye level and below our eye level. It's kind of like you have a little nail right here, and you're swinging this around to draw every line that's going off into the distance. But notice that the verticals are perfectly up and down. Even something on the ceiling. Here's the horizontal. Whatever we see facing us is horizontal, but anything that's going off into the distance uses the vanishing point. Sounds easy. It's harder than it seems if you've never done it. So before I go through and show you how to do a page of boxes in 1-point perspective, I'm going to go over some of the terminology. And we'll put these boxes aside for now. And then I'll go through and make a page of boxes. And this will be attached to the Google Classroom, this little sample. So let's take a look. And I will also attach these notes, which are these terms, and explains a little bit more about it. And then there's a little BC cartoon. I'll show it to you right now. Here's the BC character going off into the distance, and then look what happens when he gets there. It actually does come to a point. So he's kind of making a joke on that. So there's another BC cartoon here. For some reason, that artist used to love to play with perspective and make fun of it. Okay, so here's how to spell the word. Keep in mind, whenever I refer to perpendicular, that means that it's at a right angle. And I did this for the kids because they didn't always understand these terms. But it creates a right angle, so perpendicular. Parallel means they're going beside each other, going along in the two lines that never meet. Horizontal is sideways, vertical is up and down. Horizon line then, that refers to our eye level in the scene. So if we are looking at this, it's the straight line where the vanishing point actually is, and it refers to our eye level. So it's a little bit up from the bottom of the page, so we're kind of seeing this as an aerial view a little bit. We can see a little bit of the top of this diner, and we can see the tops of the telephone poles and so on. We're looking kind of down at the road. So it's a different viewpoint than if we were actually on the road here. The vanishing point is always on the horizon line, and when we do a 2-point perspective, both of those vanishing points will also be on the horizon line, but they represent a little bit different thing than the 1 point. So, important comment, verticals stay vertical. Always check if you're drawing a vertical line. Take your ruler, and you're going to need a ruler for this lesson, and make sure it lines up with the edge of the paper, because we're going to assume that the paper has perpendicular edges, horizontal and vertical. Okay, so to draw a perspective drawing that shows 1-point perspective boxes. Get these things out of the way for a minute. The first thing you'd want to do is start with your horizon line. So I'm going to get a longer ruler here. And make it be horizontal. So using the top of the paper, and there's a couple pieces of paper, make sure it's lined up. So I'm just going to make it kind of in the middle of the page. So that's my horizon line. Then what you're going to do to build a box, and you can start with one kind of low, don't have it too close to the horizon line, is you actually just draw a square or a rectangle. So make sure the vertical part is vertical. So I'm going to do this quickly, and the horizontal part is horizontal. So I'm looking at that it's matched up with the horizon line and the bottom and top of the paper, and then another vertical. So I've drawn a, be careful, that ruler wants to lean a little bit. So there's the front face of the box, and that would be kind of what we're looking at right here. Now we want to draw any line that's going away from us, that's heading off into the distance, is going to be heading toward a vanishing point, and that's where all lines converge. That's the road off in the desert going off, and it seems to meet in that one point. So what you have to do is, I gotta grab a longer ruler here, is from these three corners that are closest to the vanishing point, not this corner, but the three corners closest to the vanishing point, you want to draw, you want to actually touch the ruler to the corner and to the vanishing point. So that's going this way. And you don't have to go all the way because we're going to chop it off. We're not going to have a huge, long box. But I'm going to go a little ways up. So I'm going to touch, you know, make that ruler just kind of swivel. And sometimes it's easier to have a clear ruler too, so you can kind of see. So I've got this line, and this line. Now what I have to do is decide how long it's going to be and chop it off vertically and horizontally. So I'm going to, where is it going to be? Here's my ruler. It's nice, and it's kind of a good idea to start at the edge of the page and just go over. And then wherever you decide to stop, check and see that your ruler is still vertical and chop it off. Now I'm just going on this one side. I'm not going all the way up, because now as it turns a corner, it's going to get horizontal. And I'll do this so you can kind of see. There's the corner, and I'm going to go horizontal. See, it's even with the horizon line and the bottom of the paper, and it's going to go over to the other line, and that's my box. Now I no longer need these lines, and I've drawn kind of dark with a dark pencil so you can see it, but then you would draw a little bit lighter and erase those. So now I have a 1-point box. This represents where we're standing, where we took the photo. So I'm seeing, I took the photo right here, so I'm seeing a little bit of the right side, and this represents our eye level. So I'm also looking down on the top of it a little bit. So I can, excuse me, a little bit of the left side. I can see a little bit of this side and a little bit of that side. Now I'm going to do one over on this side, and I'm not going to use the ruler. I'm just going to draw it a little faster so you can see. So pretend I've used the ruler on that. And now I'm going to take my ruler and draw a line from the three corners that are closest to it, not this one, but the three that are closest to the vanishing point. And then I'm going to chop it off vertically and horizontally. So pretend that was a nice even box here. So you can practice doing boxes all over the place. Now what happens if you have a box right in front of where you're standing, right in front of the vanishing point? That means you won't see either side of the box. You're only going to see the lines going off to the distance. So vanishing point, chop it off horizontal. So now that one's right in front of us. What about if it's up in the air, like a box kite? Again, pretend I'm using the ruler. What are the 3 corners that are closest to the vanishing point? Well, these 3. This one is too far away. Oh, excuse me, these 3. This one's too far away. So I'm going to draw a line from the vanishing point again to from this corner, and that corner. Then I'm going to chop it off vertically wherever I want it to be. Check to make sure it's vertical. And then horizontally, where it meets this line, I'm going to go up from the horizon line, make sure it's still horizontal, and chop, chop. So now I have a box above our eye level. What are we seeing? We're seeing the bottom of it, and because we're standing right here, we're seeing a little bit of that left side. Same thing over here. Vanishing point, vanishing point, vanishing point. This one is too far away, so the 3 closest. Horizontal, it doesn't matter if you do horizontal first or vertical, but whatever you do, as soon as it meets that line, that's where you draw the other one, either the vertical or a horizontal. What happens if it's on the horizon line? Like if you were looking at a house that was sitting way off in the distance, you know, the higher up it is, and I better go back and mention this, the higher up it is on the picture plane, the farther away it is. The closer to the horizon line it is, the farther away it is. So a stop sign right here is going to be pretty big, and then it's going to get smaller and smaller, just like the dotted line on the road will, and until, you know, so that also gives the illusion of distance. Notice that the road here is really wide, and then it gets higher and closer to the horizon line. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's just a little dot. Okay, so back to this box. And since it's right here, it's farther away than this one, and it would normally be smaller. So this, we don't have 3 lines, or 3 corners that are close. We only have 2. So this one and this one, and then it's in front of our horizon line, so we need to erase the horizon line there and just chop off the vertical. So here's the horizon line. So now we have a box right on the horizon line. What if it's right here? Then it's right in front of our where we're standing, and it's not to the left or the right, so we don't see any of the sides, and it's just a square. And that wouldn't be a very interesting drawing. So you probably wouldn't want to have it right there. Plus the cars will crash into it when they're going down the road. Okay, so just, I may be jumping the gun on this, but what happens if you want to have a peaked roof? Like a house that has a peaked roof. Well, here's a little trick. You want to find the center of the face of the box, because usually the peak is at the very center. You could measure it and get the center, but there's another trick, and especially that trick is important because what happens if the peak is on this side? If you measure the center, remember this half of the building is closer to us, and it's going to be bigger than this half. So we want to do another little trick here. We're going to draw an X with our ruler. And this works on 2-point perspective also, which we'll get to in a little bit. So we're going to draw an X lightly. That's the center of this face of the building. So if we take a vertical and go up, the peak of the roof is going to be somewhere on that line. The peak, the slant of the roof has nothing to do with vanishing points. It's just the way the architect has designed it. So if you are back east where there's a lot of snow, you might have a really high roof that looks like that. If you don't need a real high peak, maybe it's right here. So I'm going to create the peak right here and right here. Okay, so that means I've covered up part of that that house. Okay, and I don't need all these little lines anymore. Now, what happens to this part of the roof? Well, if you're standing up on a roof and you're starting to walk, you're going off in this direction. So remember, anything that's heading in that direction is going to be using that vanishing point. So the very top of the roof is going to angle toward that vanishing point. What about the back of it? That's not some wonky little direction. That is going to be exactly the same angle as the front of the roof. Just like this vertical stayed vertical at the back, this slant is going to be at exactly parallel. So I line up my ruler and I start moving it until it's exactly parallel, and I chop off the back of the roof. Now, this is nice that it's a video, so if you didn't get all that, you can watch it. You can just slide back and watch it again. Now, what happens if we want to have, and remember this was kind of a wonky box, but if we want to have the peak over here, same thing. Draw a, let's make sure this is correct here. Vertical. Vertical. Okay, so I'm going to draw an X with my ruler, pretend I'm using my ruler, on that side, and then I'm going to draw a vertical right where the X crisscrosses. Notice that this half, because it's closer to us, is going to be bigger than this half. That's where the peak of the roof is, and decide where you want it to be. Let's make it maybe about that much of a slant. Okay, and then it's going to just be horizontal right here. Just like the other parts of the house. It's just going to be horizontal. But what about this angle? Well, it's going to repeat right here. So I'm going to take my ruler and just slide it over and repeat that same angle. So now I have a house that has a peak roof on the front face or one on the side, and I can erase all this other stuff so you can see it a little bit better. Let me make this a little bit better. Okay. Now what about things that are on the house, like a door? A door here is just going to be horizontal and vertical. A window here is going to be horizontal and vertical, so on, because this is the horizontal face. But if it's on this side, we've got to use the vanishing point. So the tops of windows and the bottoms of windows, see how I've had my ruler touching the vanishing point, or like that? And then what about the windows themselves? The sides of them are going to be vertical. Check. This is where your ruler will start to tilt if you're not careful. Vertical, vertical. So be careful, because I made my line a little longer here, and you would have a tendency to do that. But you want it to be vertical. Just follow the edge of the house here. So now I have windows on this side of the building, and they're heading off to the vanishing point, or vertical. Same with the door. Vertical, vertical, but the top of the door, it's not going to be straight like this side. It's going to be going back to the vanishing point. Tiles on the roof, just like pretend there's a little hole in the ruler and it's swinging around. So and so on. So those will off. But what about the actual shingles? Though they're laying flat on the roof, so they'll follow that same angle that the roof line does. And I don't really know how shingles look, but they're going to angle the same angle as the roof itself. Shingles over here are just going to be horizontal, horizontal, and then follow the angle of the roof. Okay, if you wanted to say that this was Joe's Bar or something, you can draw guidelines for the sign and then put the letters on. Now, if you look at the word Joe's, This is vertical, this is horizontal, this is vertical and horizontal, and this is doing its own thing. So the vertical part of the J is going to be straight up and down, but the top part is going back to the vanishing point. O has sort of a verticality to it. There's the vertical part of the E, and the horizontal parts are going off to the vanishing point. Unless Joe's was written on this side, then it would just look normal, because this is the front face that's facing us. Okay, so there's 1 point perspective. Now, stay with me, folks. We're going to have a little change here. What happens if that box is turned now and the closest thing to us is the corner? Then we no longer have, here's a little bit different view here. Here's 3 views. This, yeah, they also have different lighting. Notice that it says, so when we get to painting and drawing this, you're going to need to think about where the sunlight's coming, you know, and what the cast shadow looks like. And where is your viewpoint? On this one, we're kind of looking a little bit more at the side, and this is sort of a squishified square or a rhombus. And this is not quite as squished because we're looking a little more from an aerial view. If we looked at it straight down, if we looked at that box straight down, it would just be a rectangle or a square. But as you look at it from the side, just like a circle on the top of a cylinder starts to get squished into an ellipse, the top of a box will start to get squished. So here's some different views of 2-point boxes. And here's, if you're doing a still life and you needed to have a box of tea, you would have to pay attention to what kind of direction it is. Is it 1 or 2 points? So these are all 2 points because the closest thing to us is the corner. Now it might be a little bit more angled one way or the other, or we might be looking a little higher up and lower on it, and that we'll go through that. And then of course the lighting might change depending on where the light source is. So here's our little diagram that I will attach onto the Google Classroom, and it shows 2-point boxes. So I'll leave this here. So again, you want to start with a horizon line. And it's going to be horizontal, even with the top and the bottom of the page. Now, if this is just a 2-point and everything in the picture is like a subdivision and all lined up in the same direction, then this will be our only horizontal, because nothing else is horizontal here. So now we're going to make vanishing points, and they need to be pretty far away from each other, or it's going to look real weird, like you're looking at it with a fisheye camera lens or something. So make them as far apart as you can, and if you're drawing on a piece of regular paper like this, turn it sideways so they can be as far apart as you possibly can. If you're using a reference of a small photograph or something, chances are the vanishing points are off the picture. And quite often you need to add, let me grab something here and I'll show you. You need to attach a piece of paper to extend that horizon line and have that vanishing point off the page. So here's the 2 vanishing points on this drawing that this student did. And so she built, the thing closest to us was this corner of the table. So everything's going to either that direction or that direction, including the floor lines and so on. So what do these points represent? They don't represent where we're standing anymore, like on the 1 point drawing. Remember this one, the vanishing point represented where we're standing in front of, and then this is our eye level. This still is our eye level, but what this vanishing point now represents, the two vanishing points represents the two perpendicular directions. So everything going in this direction is going to go to that vanishing point, and everything going in this direction is going to another vanishing point. And the two vanishing points, unless you're holding your camera crooked, are right on the horizon line. There's not one up high and one down low. They need to be even with each other. Okay, so let's draw a box. And on this paper that I'll attach to the Google Classroom, I've kind of numbered them. That doesn't mean you have to do it in that order, but if you follow the numbers, you'll kind of see the order. And I'll go ahead and build a box in that with those same numbers. So the very first thing you do is the corner closest to you. If you were drawing a city scene with lots of buildings, you would pick the building on the corner and start with that and do the vertical. Okay, so I'm gonna make it low, below the horizon line, so we can see the top of it, like we can see this top of this. And I'm going to just draw a vertical, not smack in the middle, but maybe over a little bit, just like this one is. And I'll draw, check and see that it's vertical, and line it up with the edge of the paper. So there's my vertical line. Don't go too close to the horizon line, or it'll make a really squishified top, because it's getting close to our eye level. So keep it kind of low. Now, so that was line number 1. Then I said 2 and 3. So that would be the top and the bottom of this face of the cube going off to this vanishing point. So I'm going to touch the ruler. And you don't have to go all the way, because remember, we're going to chop it off at some point. Let's get a smaller ruler. And the top of it, going to the vanishing point. Now, I just randomly made the two lines, and they may not be vertical on each other. So at this point, you have to take your ruler and make sure that it's vertical. Stand above it, and then drop a vertical down to chop it off. So that, so this is 2, 3, and whoops. No, well, okay. I didn't do it in the same order. I went ahead and chopped that off. Okay. And the way I had it on the diagram is, then I did these two lines going off in the other direction. So I'm going to start with the top here and go off in one direction. And the bottom of it is going to go off in the left vanishing point. So there's 2. So let's go, that was 4 and 5 on my diagram, 4 and 5. And then 6 is the vertical. I put a little V there indicating vertical. So somewhere along here, I want to drop a vertical. Can be anywhere. And then erase what you don't need anymore. So that was number 6. And then I said this was number 7. So that vertical is number 7. So it kind of looks like an open book or something. Notice how these two lines are not really parallel. They're actually sort of angling toward each other, because if those kept going, they would meet in that vanishing point. So I've chopped it off vertically before it got that far. So now the only 2 other lines I need to do are the top of the box, the back top of the box. So I'm going to make this one right here, going from here, is going to go to the left vanishing point, because you notice it's going in that direction. So I'm going to take the ruler and line it up and draw the line. And then this one is going to go to the right vanishing point. So you don't know where that back corner is until you draw those 2 lines, and wherever they crisscross, that's the back corner. So there's a box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I did vertical 6, vertical 7, and then this one going left, this one going right, and where they crisscross is the back corner back here. Okay, and then you can try another one. I'll do this pretty fast. I don't want to draw these boxes, especially if you're a beginner, too close to the vanishing points or too close to the horizon line, because it gets kind of wonky looking. So let's draw it sort of in the middle and sort of low. So number 1, 2 going to this vanishing point, 3 going to that vanishing point, 4 going to the left vanishing point, 5, pretend I'm using the ruler, chop off vertical, and crisscross. So I've drawn another box at a little bit different angle. Let's try one up in the sky. Vertical, left vanishing point, now don't you do it, just wing it like I'm doing it on the demo, but actually touch your ruler to the vanishing point and use your ruler on these practice ones. So right vanishing point, chop it vertical wherever you want, and then crisscross. This one's going to the left vanishing point. This one's going to the right vanishing point, and they crisscross, and we'll get rid of all of the extraneous lines there. Okay, again, what happens if you have one right on the horizon line? Then it's at eye level. So there's our vertical, and we won't see the top or the bottom. It's like a house right at our eye level, like you usually see in a landscape. So in a lot of these photos, you're not going to see a top or a bottom. So in this one, it's up above us, so we see the bottom. This one, we see the top because it's below our eye level. But if it's right on the horizon, then we have a whole different kind of concept. Again, these verticals stay vertical. Now we're going to erase the horizon line where it covered it up, and I'm going to erase these extra lines here. So there we have a building. If this is Joe's Bar, anything, if the lettering's on this side, we got to draw those guidelines, and the vertical part of the letter stays vertical, but the horizontal part goes to one or the other of the vanishing points. Since it's on this left side of the building, it's going to go to the left vanishing point. And this one will go to the right vanishing point. And you can erase those guidelines later. So you could actually build a city, vanishing point, vanishing point, vanishing point, vertical. Now what happens if you have let's make this taller. Let's make like a skyscraper here. So this is a 2-story building. Right vanishing point. Okay, so now as you're walking down the street on the sidewalk here next to Joe's Bar, if you're walking this way, you're going toward that vanishing point. And if you're walking this way, down this block, this is Hollywood and Vine, then you're going in the other direction. So these are perpendicular to each other. From an aerial view, this would look perpendicular. Google Maps, going straight down. You know those little cracks in the sidewalk that you don't want to step on or you break your mother's back? If you're walking down the sidewalk, pretend you're walking down here, they're going perpendicular to the direction you're walking. So if you're walking down this sidewalk, what's the perpendicular direction to this? It's the other vanishing point. So if I want to draw, I need a longer ruler here for this big piece of paper, but if I want to draw those cracks, I've got to use the left vanishing point, even though I'm on the right-hand sidewalk, and I can't really see what I'm doing, but they'll be nice and flat, and they'll get closer together. This sidewalk going this way, the perpendicular direction is that vanishing point. So the right-hand vanishing point is going to be for the cracks on this one. And this is a pretty wide sidewalk. Look at how wide it looks like it's becoming. It's because I made it sort of fat for the angle that we're seeing it. So, you know, scale is a big thing to think about too. So these cracks would be getting closer together. And there is a mathematical architectural way to figure those out with X's and so on, but I'm not going to go through those right now. But what I did want to show you is, okay, Joe's is written on this side, so it's using this vanishing point, but what if it's got one of those neon signs coming out from the building? We've got a different situation then. If you're walking down the street here and you see this neon sign coming out of the building, it's going at perpendicular direction to the face of the building. So it's going to be going in that direction. So watch what I do here. I'm going to use the right vanishing point, and I'm not a sign painter or anything, but I'm going to draw a couple of little braces that hold up this sign. And it's going to be one of those really tall vertical signs like in the old Las Vegas. And I'll leave Joe's on there. Now the actual sign itself is going to be vertical. And we're covering up part of that Joe's sign there. That's going, so now can you see that that's coming here? Let me make this even longer so you can see it angle. Once it gets below the horizon, it's going to be angling up. So here it's angling down, here it's angling up to that vanishing point. And if it was right on the horizon, it would just be horizontal. So now we have, here we can even show the thickness to the sign by putting a little line going down to that vanishing point and up to that vanishing point. So that's the thickness of it. And it's turned a corner, just like this box has turned the corner. So now we're using the left vanishing point again. What about the letters themselves? Since it's on the sign, it's going to be using that vanishing point. So vertical, right vanishing point, vertical, vertical, right vanishing point. So if something looks wonky, ask yourself again, which direction is it going? Is it going that way? Yes. Or is it written on the building so it's going that way? Okay, now remember when we did the peaked roof, and I know some people have had this difficulty, where we wanted to find the center of the face of the building. It was easy on this side, we could have just measured it, but on this side, it's in perspective, so we need to find the perspective center, not the measured center. So we drew an X. So let's say on this box here, the peak of the roof is going to be on this side. So I'm going to draw that X, and remember you would draw lightly and later erase it. And that will tell me where the perspective center is of this face of the building. It's slightly bigger here than here. And I'm going to draw the vertical going up. And somewhere on this this line is the peak. I'm going to make it right here, just for the heck of it. It could be anywhere on that line. Let's make it actually, well, let's see. If I make it too low, I'm not going to be able to show you this very well, because at some point you don't even see the top of the roof. Okay, so there's the peak. It has nothing to do with perspective. It just is its own angle. I could have made it go here and use that. Now from here, going back, it's going in that direction. It's not like this one where it was just horizontal. It's going off to the opposite vanishing point, the opposite direction. So I'm going to draw this line going like that. And then whatever this slant is, it's going to repeat. So I'm going to just follow that and have exactly the same slant back here. So there's our peaked roof. If it were on this side, if it was on this side, then again I would draw the X, find the perspective center, draw that vertical there. So this half's bigger than that half. And somewhere on this line is the peak of the roof. Okay. So if we've drawn, oops, I didn't do it right. I drew the wrong direction. Okay, let's try that again. Okay. So there's the peak of the roof. Since we're looking down on this roof, this is going to be going up to that right vanishing point, the top of the roof. And then whatever the front does, and I didn't make it quite right, I'm going to slide my ruler over so it's parallel until I hit the corner of the house, and there's the back of the roof. Oh boy, I didn't make that parallel. Okay. So the shingles would be following that right vanishing point and then following the peak, the angle of the roof. Okay, so those are 2-point and 1-point boxes, and I suggest you take a piece of Xerox paper or something and try a page of 1-point and a page of 2-point boxes. Now, to apply this, and I might go into a second video for this because it's getting a little long, but to apply this, you have to say, okay, look at your photo reference. I'm going to grab some here. And let's say, you know, looking at this box, that's 1-point perspective because this is horizontal and those are angling back to one vanishing point. This box has turned, so the corner of it is closest to us, and you can see there's a high horizon line. So if you were going to draw this little scene, you would have a 1 and a 2-point drawing in the same drawing because they're each doing their own little angle. So it's not like a subdivision or a city where everything is lined up all together. So be careful of that. These all have their own little set of vanishing points. 1-point going back like that, and 2-point with the corner closest to us and sort of an aerial view. Okay, so I did this in another demo, another quarter. So when I was drawing this, I had to figure this was 2-point perspective. Things were going to one vanishing point over here and to a different vanishing point here. Now, if we're real close, it almost looks like they're parallel, but can you see that they're angling toward each other a little bit? So they're getting closer and closer. So what you don't want to do is have them look like they're going farther apart from each other. Like that. That's wonky. So instead, you want to have them look like, here's the corner of the mailbox. It's vertical. You want to have this line and this line look like they're sort of going, meeting each other somewhere off in the distance. Okay, and this line, and pretend there's another line here, this line are going and meeting somewhere off in the distance. Now, another thing you can do, instead of doing vanishing points, is just use a pencil as an angle finder. So you hold your pencil up and you say, okay, I'm going to draw that same angle. And then check your drawing. Make sure you got it right and they aren't going away from each other a little bit. Parallel is sort of okay, but it's easy to just have it a little off. Now on something like this, the back of this is going to be vertical, and then we have a curve. Well, that's almost like doing the peaked roof. I would find where the center is, right there, and that's where the top of that arch is going to be. Otherwise, if you have it like that, it's going to look kind of funny. So again, the top would be here. I drew it here before, but and then it curves down and then ends up being vertical on the other end. The same thing with this. Now this is an old beat up one, so it might have a slightly different angle. The post that it's on, there's the corner right there. This is going up to that same vanishing point, wherever it is. These two sides. Chop, chop. This is kind of like the peaked roof, but not quite. Okay, so you see how you can kind of build your picture. Now another thing that's a good thing you can try and do is if you take your photograph, and especially if you have kind of a small photograph like this, it helps. You can put it onto, like tape it onto a piece of paper, and doesn't have to be this big. And try and figure out where the vanishing points are. You don't have to know where the horizon line is. As soon as you find the vanishing points, that will determine where the horizon line is. Because remember, the vanishing points are on the horizon line. So I'm going to follow this angle, and it might be a little off because it's an old beat up house. But it looks like things are meeting kind of over here in one vanishing point. And I'll do this one. This might be a little closer. I'm going from this corner to that corner of the end of the roof. And that's all I have on that side. So we've got, let me do this again. Lining this up here. Okay, so we've got that vanishing point. I got it wrong before. And that vanishing point, and that tells me what my viewpoint is, where the horizon line is in relation to how I'm looking, or my eye level. So this is my horizon line, and these are my vanishing points. So that means if I'm drawing this on a piece of watercolor paper, let's say this size, I need to keep in mind that, you know, here's the corner of my cabin. I need to keep in mind that my vanishing points are way off the page. So I can either use the pencil as an angle finder or the ruler as an angle finder and try and repeat that same angle. Or I can actually attach another piece of paper to my paper on the back. You know, so just a newsprint or a piece of tracing paper, and then use those, and especially if it's a complicated Victorian building where you have lots of windows and doors, everything's going to have its own vanishing point, or everything's going to use one or the other of the vanishing points. So here's a couple of examples. Assignment for my kids, and then I'm going to wrap it up here, and we'll do another video for the drawing and painting classes about this. Here's a drawing that somebody did. And the horizon line is low, so we're mostly looking up, and you can see that a lot of these sections are going down to the vanishing point way down here. So the vanishing points are off the page, so that's great. And look at the shading that was done with pencil. So the kids had to do, they had a choice. They could do a castle. This is in 2-point. They could do a city scene like this, where they had to have at least one neon sign coming up and some you know, some lettering on the building and some doors and windows and telephone poles or street lamps lined up. And on these, the tops and bottoms of the street lamps would be lined up. Same with telephone poles. You'd have a guideline that you would later erase. Or a castle. So here's a castle that somebody did. And they had to have shading in it. Or here's another city scene. And on this, look at how high the horizon is. That means this is sort of a helicopter view. We're looking down on this truck here. Or a maze. The maze had to be going, you know, so everything had to be going either this direction or that direction, and thickness of the walls. Here's another maze. So they did these, you know, and here's one you could see where the vanishing point was attached. So it's here and here. So they had, you know, a couple weeks to do this and get the shading and all that. Here's some, I think I showed you the 1-point drawings already of the interior or the exterior scene. So to apply this, depending on which class you're in, you're gonna be taking a building and you're gonna be drawing it accurately and then putting pencil shading on it in the drawing class. And in the watercolor class, you're gonna be doing watercolor, but having a nice strong light source of some kind. It can be something as simple as this. This might have even, no, it's not. Or this. These were demos. But probably it'll be a little more elaborate like that. This is a really nice example that a student in a watercolor class I took, I got from him. So we were both students. Now, what about something like this? You didn't even use vanishing point, or I didn't even use vanishing point. I was just dealing with the texture of the front of the building because I'm looking at it straight on as one of those boxes was. So I'm looking straight on at it, and like if it was right here, I don't see the top or the bottom. Okay? And so you'll be figuring out what your medium is going to be, and what, on this one, it was ink and watercolor. And that's basically a 1-point. I don't even know where I got that. Okay, so you take your photo, you figure out whether it's 2 or 1 point. Figure out your vanishing point. You might have to expand a little piece of paper on it. So what do you think this is? Well, look, the closest thing to us is the corner, and there's no horizontals. It's either going in that direction or that direction. So that would be 2 point. As with this, there's the corner. That corner is the first line you draw in the drawing, and then you build it from there. Now here you have one and this, where the corner is not a real straight line, but you still draw it just to guide you in the early stages. Go very general, and then you get more specific and you break up that corner into little pieces of logs and so on. And here you can see all of these are going to the right vanishing point, but the shingles themselves have the same slant as the roof itself. All of the logs on this side are going to that vanishing point. The logs of that on that side are going to that one. Okay, I think that was all I was going to show you right now. Okay, we'll quit there, and then when I do the demo on actually creating a building, it'll be a little bit more detailed on the building itself. And what I may end up doing is one building and use that same preliminary drawing to transfer onto either watercolor paper or drawing paper, and take it from there. Okay, I know that was a lot of information, but a lot will be attached to the Google Classroom too. So hopefully this is a review for some of you, because there's a lot of information. And if it's brand new to some of you guys, then look at the video a couple of times and slow it down and stop and try the boxes out and then continue the video. Don't try and understand everything in one swoop without actually trying to do them. Okay, good luck.